Salam, peace. Welcome to Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and you're watching Galaxy 19 Satellite, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, and Muslim Network.tv. Pretty soon we'll be on Apple TV as well. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a strange world at this moment. There are a whole lot of people looking for food. Actually, before pandemic, 100 days ago, there were still 35 million Americans who did not have food security, which means they are unable to find enough food for themselves and their families. And now that 45.5 million people have become jobless, that's huge. In Mississippi, they were saying 25% of the people do not have enough food. Now they're saying the same thing about New York City. New York City actually says that 1 in 4 New Yorkers need food. While all of this is going on, somebody is making money. And these are billionaires. Are they working hard to make this money? How they have positioned themselves? Are there good billionaires and bad billionaires? What is going on in our country? Well, poor, we were told, are becoming poorer and poorer, and now they're looking more for food, while billionaires are becoming billionaires. Well, they were already billionaires, but they are increasing their wealth. They have increased since in last 3 months by 20%. That how much it is? It's $500 billion. So while world is suffering, economy is going down, people are looking for food, how come billionaires have just made $500 billion? Well, somebody knows that, and that is Omar Ocampo. Welcome to Muslim Network TV.
Thank you for having me, Imam Malik. It's a pleasure to be here.
Omar Ocampo has co-authored a report with Chuck Collins and Sofia Peslaski about Billionaire Bonanza 2020, wealth windfalls, tumbling taxes, and pandemic profiteers. Wow, you not only know how to research, but come up with the name which attracts people, huh? Billionaires Bonanza.
Yeah.
What about making a television series on that, Billionaire Bonanza?
You know, it's interesting because back in the day, they used to have like lifestyles of the rich and famous. So like, might as well bring that back.
Yeah.
Especially in our current context. And, we see how, wealth is, starting to distribute itself to the top.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Omar Ocampo is a researcher for the program on inequality and the common good at the Institute for Policy Studies. He graduated from the University of Massachusetts, Boston with a BA in political science and holds a master's in international relations from the American University in Cairo. Omar is also a part of Latin-based grassroots organization called Mi Gente, did I pronounce correctly?
Yeah, Mi Gente, that's correct.
Mi Gente. Okay, all right. So, so tell me, what are the secrets have you discovered? I like you and me to become billionaires also at this time.
Well, I think the secret is to be owners and to have, some leverage in the political system, because it is of my opinion that and the research shows is that when there's a unequal distribution of material resources and wealth, there's also unequal distribution in how people can influence the political process and their politicians. So if we want something, to democratize our society, I think we need to democratize the wealth as well. So like we can just take someone easy like Jeff Bezos. He's seen the greatest amount of increase in wealth during the pandemic. He started off the year worth 115 billion, and as of like yesterday, he was worth 160 billion. So that's like a $45 billion increase. That's greater than the GDP of Iceland. So I think he's done a lot of things to make sure that he was put in a position where he can reap the benefits of what's happening in the pandemic, and that's getting tax breaks, exploiting every single tax loophole so he didn't have to pay taxes. That's something that his competition can't do. Sometimes he also lobbies local and state governments for subsidies so they can open up warehouses. That's something his competition can't do. So some people might say like, oh, he had like a great business model, but there's also some competitive advantage that he got because he was able to get some influence from the state.
So he got a great business model and he got a great tax saving model.
Yeah.
Really that he doesn't pay any taxes on Amazon?
Yeah, and I think this is not just an issue with Mr. Bezos. I think it's an issue for all the highest income earners in the country, because one thing that the top 1% they always do is that they revolt against the tax system. So even if we are able to pass some type of legislation where there's an increase in taxes, down the line they're gonna try to be able to repeal it, and that's something they've been successful at doing since the 1970s. So our report also showed that in relation to their wealth, the taxation of the billionaire class has gone down 79%. So that's drastic. And then we ask ourselves, what do people do with all this extra income from having less taxes? They don't normally invest it in productive activity and job growth, which is something that we're told happens. Like, they'll invest in the economy, things will get better, society as a whole benefits. But in our research shows that they invested in speculative behavior in financial instruments, or sometimes they even lend the money to the government by purchasing bonds. So the government is actually borrowing from the people they're supposed to be taxing. So yeah,
giving them some money back.
Exactly, and that money comes from the middle and working classes. So therefore it's a literal wealth transfer to the top.
What is the current state of joblessness in our country? I mean, of course, billionaires are making $500 billion. Wow. That's so what is the state of joblessness at this moment, at the same time when these people are making tons of money?
Yeah, this is I think the most disheartening part, because I think there's over 45 million people who have filed for unemployment. And not only that, but household wealth in general has, I think the Fed recently put out a report saying that $6.5 trillion of household wealth has vanished. And that is a staggering number.
That is in last 6 months, the last 3 months?
Yeah, since in the first quarter of 2020. And
how much you say? $6.5 trillion.
$6.5 trillion in household wealth. Wow. And to me, it just shows that it's really a tale of two pandemics. So it highlights the fact that the stock market is not necessarily a reflection of the regular economy. And it also highlights the fact that what is good for the rich is not necessarily good for the working and middle classes. And the way this is, I think that statistic is reflective of all that. There's a $6.5 trillion wealth vanished. Meanwhile, billionaires are gaining $500 billion during this time. So there's a huge contrast and disparity.
Wow, $6.5 trillion of household wealth, which is lost. That's substantial amount. I don't know how long it's gonna take to recover, but that was built on already existing poverty and unemployment in this country, right?
Exactly.
So what was before, which was at the top of which people lost this much?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
How much was the poverty in existence before the pandemic?
All right. Yeah. So, this is actually a really interesting question because I don't think the U.S. actually measures poverty that well. So I think the statistic is that there's like 35 million people who um, aren't able to, who would be considered below the poverty line, and that's a huge amount of people. But then it also like, I think poverty is relative depending on where you live, because if you have $20,000 and somewhere in the, I don't know, like New York compared to somewhere like Montana, I think the person in Montana is better off than the person in New York because the cost of living in New York is so much greater. So I think that the way we measure poverty is inadequate, and I think it should be done on a state by state basis, and then we can have a real accurate picture. In my opinion, I think the bottom 50% of the country, they have very little wealth, so they're living more along the lines of like check by check. One emergency can throw them into basically financial ruin, and that could be a car accident or something that we said in our report that most people are not able to. A large portion, a lot of people are not able to have a $400 emergency expense. And this is in the the richest country in the world. So so poverty in itself, it was pretty bad before the pandemic, and I think is just exasperating it. And I think it's also revealing a lot, because I think people are starting to like open their eyes at the huge disparities that are occurring.
So the people, I mean, who's taking care of all these people? I mean, there were 35% before, and now, a huge number of people who have become unemployed. Yes, there are some checks here coming here and there, which are going to go away within a month or so. What is our infrastructure of taking care of poor people who are in need of food, who are struggling, who have lost, huge amount, trillions of wealth? So where these people are the institutions and the mosque and the churches and people who are taking care of them are well financed to continue to handle that? What is the state of our infrastructure to take care of poor people?
I think our infrastructure is actually not that good. So like out of all the advanced economies in the West, the United States has the worst safety net, and also has the worst record on workers' rights and worker protections. So I think the response to the pandemic was, like you said, they gave people a $1,200 check. That's probably like 2 weeks of wages for your average worker. That's gone in a minute. Meanwhile,
no, they did not give. President Trump personally gave them with his signature.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of Trump, I mean, he did a tax cut in 2017. It was estimated it'll cost $1 trillion over the next 10 years. And this just gives the government less resources to fight the health and economic crisis. And and during the legislative process, for the corona relief, there was tax breaks also given in there too. So like they're spending billions of dollars in bailouts. They're printing trillions of dollars of money. They're buying corporate debt. So they're doing everything to ensure that people who had wealth to begin with either are able to maintain their wealth. And I think their logic is that they think that if we just put money in their hands, that it will somehow trickle down. And I don't think I don't think there's proof of that, especially since people are still being furloughed and laid off. So I think our research, one of our recommendations is to put cash in the hands of consumers directly.
Okay. So talking about the infrastructure to take care of the poor people, one is the government aspect.
Yes.
And our private sector or individuals and well-meaning people I mean, when Katrina happened in New Orleans, I mean, Uncle Sam was nowhere to be found. These were the people of the community and churches and mosques and their I mean, I remember raising money in Chicago and sending to the mosque there because they were feeding tens of thousands of people. So how is their capacity increasing or decreasing to help people who are in need, who are, in a way, first responders? They know the neighbor who need funding. And in the current crisis, while their income probably has also gone down, is there any study of that, a private religious or non-religious system of helping the people?
At the moment, I'm not sure if there has been any study of this, but there has been a lot of charity happening in the private sector, both religious and non-religious. So if I can give like a personal anecdote, there's a gym that I go to. It's called the YMCA. I did not suspend my membership because I knew that they were using the money from from members in order to feed and distribute food and in the area where I live. And I think that's phenomenal. And I also think that my aunt, her church, they do a lot of they do a lot of work with people who are having some type of necessity at the moment. And I think this is crucial, and actually philanthropy and charitable giving has increased during this time. But if I can give like a critique of that, is that it just doesn't scale on a national level. Which is why we advocate for some type of governmental social safety net to ensure that there's affordable housing and maybe even a guaranteed income. But I'm definitely encouraged by the amount of charity that is being done.
But it is nowhere what is needed in such a major catastrophe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, this is Malik Mujahid on Muslim Network TV, and I'm talking with Omar Ocampo, who is from the Institute for Policy Studies about poverty and billionaires. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and I'm talking with Omar Ocampo, who is with the Institute for Policy Studies. And we are talking about billionaires making $500 billion in 3 months, while in the first quarter of this year, general wealth of the population has gone down by more than $5 trillion. How is it possible? What techniques billionaires are using and what people can do about that? And you're watching Muslim Network TV on Galaxy 19, Amazon Fire TV, as well as Roku, and of course on our own website, muslimnetwork.tv. Umar, tell me this thing, that the systemic changes which you're recommending are tremendous, but are people listening? Do you have any evidence that that your IPS, Institute for Policy Studies, is having some impact in the thought processes of, I mean, it's a think tank, a general purpose think tank, but it's on the progressive side. It used to have hardly any attention in the past. Are more people listening to it or less?
I think if we're talking about the general public, I think a lot of people are paying attention because the Billionaire Bonanza report actually got a lot of traction. So in the print media, at least. So we were covered by CNN, Business Insider, Reuters, even Fox News, picked it up, and even Forbes published our report, and they were like, "Hey, they use our
It's
data."
picked up by Fox News. There must be something wrong with you.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, hey, if they want to give us, free press, we'll take it. But never compromise our ideals, though. But yeah, so I got traction, and some politicians, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she tweeted out about it and basically understood that we need good policy in order to make our society more democratic and equitable, and if we had a proper taxation system, then the state would have resources to do the Green New Deal, or have some good unemployment benefits, have a guaranteed income or universal health care, things that I think should be, I think people's basic necessities should be met. So we did get some traction. I think now at the moment, with the protests right now against police brutality being led by the Black Lives Matter, I think there's more of an urge to people want to do something substantial. So I hopefully some of these policies, or some of our recommendations will inform policymakers, because the pre-existing condition is extreme inequality, extreme wealth inequality, and racial wealth inequality. Those are the pre-existing conditions of America, and they're systemic problems, so they need systemic solutions.
So you're saying more people are listening and tweeting about it, but most of the think tanks have a huge endowment, and billionaires are funding them.
Mm-hmm.
Who are your billionaires?
So believe it or not, we are not funded by billionaires. We do have a lot of donors who donate to our think tank, because they believe in progressive taxation, that they should be taxed more in order to give people more of an equal opportunity.
Well, that's Warren Buffett. He says that he pays less taxes than his secretary. So
yeah, no, but
funding you also?
No, so he is paying less taxes than his secretary when you add up all the taxes, like sales tax, like there's all these like taxes, and if you add it all up, it's pretty much either the same or less. So, but the thing is, this what's interesting. Even those who have a lot of who are wealthy, like the best example is Michael Bloomberg, because during the debate he had during the presidential primary, he said, "Yeah, we need to increase taxes on the rich," but he was against a wealth tax, because that's where all their money, all their wealth is, all their money is in assets, as opposed to what they earn from working. Your average billionaire, they 20% of the income probably comes from working, and the other 80% is from things they owned that has a dividend or a return. So fortunately, people like Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders, AOC, they're all for like a wealth tax. So, and that could raise significant revenue.
So there are taxes mostly they want to they support increase of the taxes, but they don't want to support tax on wealth.
Yeah,
that's very interesting. As a Muslim, in Quran there is a huge emphasis on distribution of wealth.
Mm-hmm.
God tells us so that the wealth does not remain in the hands of few people. So when we give, we have three types of giving. One is zakat, and one is a general charity, which is encouraged. And then you just don't make money on just money. You have to have a labor. So there are three instruments. Yeah. In the first one, actually, it's on wealth. So you don't give out zakat on income or your income or saving of that time, but it is overall wealth. You give away part of your overall wealth. And so these people who are billionaires and have increased by $500 billion in last 3 months, they don't want to pay wealth tax. So what is your recommendation about the wealth tax? How much money you want to get and how much is your cut in there?
So the wealth tax, I mean, there's different proposals, right? I think the Elizabeth Warren has a pretty good proposal where she just recommends a 2% wealth tax on households who have over $50 million in household wealth. And I think once you reach $1 billion, it's a 3% wealth tax. So
That's too low. I mean, I like Elizabeth. I like to see her as vice president or something.
likewise.
But above 50 million, whatever. I mean, that's little big threshold.
It is, and this is why, like, I find the talking points that are deployed by what I would call the wealth defense industry. They act like, you know, this was somehow, you know, like we're punishing success or whatever. No, but it's really small. The tax, like the rate is small, but it would actually generate a lot of revenue. I don't have the numbers in my head, but it'll be like over 10 years, like hundreds of billions of dollars.
So
you know?
who else has a good proposal like that? Better than this one?
Oh, Bernie Sanders, because all his rates are just a little bit higher. But the thing I like about Bernie Sanders as well is that because taxation is a part of it, but Bernie Sanders also supports, you know, like worker cooperatives and having some democracy at work. This could be growing the labor movement, so workers can have a say and participate in the management of the company that they work for, and then they can negotiate what share of profits goes to the workforce and what share of the profits goes to the owners and shareholders.
Well, brother, that revolution is on pause for now. Tell me other proposals which are for wealth distribution. I mean, we Muslims pay 2.5% of our wealth every year. Tell me what other, proposals you have. For example, you have something, Pandemic Profiteering Oversight Committee.
Oh yeah,
I like that. So you want to get some cut from whatever. So if they have made $500 billion, how much we need to get from there?
Yeah. So the logic of the Pandemic Profiteering Committee is the problem with any economic crisis. Large corporations will benefit disproportionately because their competition goes out of business. So therefore, they increase their market share, and then they can also exploit the crisis by raising prices not according to like supply and demand principles. So the revenue that could be raised from a tax on pandemic profits could be enormous, and this is not without precedent. This, I think, happened in World War I and World War II, that the Congress established some type of committee to tax excess profits, and then that could be that revenue.
Even at that time, there were some people making money while the Great Depression was going on.
Exactly, yeah, there were, and yeah, and then. Yeah, and then we also have we call like a millionaire surtax. So for people who are making over $2 million a year, which is less than 1% of the population, we have a tax on people who make over $2 million a year, and then we've estimated that would raise over.
So that tax is a wealth tax, or what type of tax is that?
No, this is on income.
Okay, income tax. Okay.
Yeah, so it's like a income surtax. So like we'll just have a tax on over people who make over 2 million, and then we estimated that on the low end that could raise over $600 billion in 10 years. And but if we're talking about like wealth, you know, another good wealth tax mechanism is an estate tax. Right, so what people get from inheritance, it's like it's really low, and it just makes sure that that wealth concentration becomes generational. So someone like Jeff Bezos can pass on his wealth to let's say his children. They won't have to pay a significant amount of tax.
You're watching Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid, and I'm talking with Omar Ocampo, who is from Institute for Policy Studies, and we're talking Billionaires Bonanza. And what can we do to have huge amount of people who have lost their jobs or have already been poor, who are struggling for food? How the richest country in the world can be little kinder and little gentler in taking care of its own people. We'll be right back after these messages. Welcome back to Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid. I'm talking with Omar Ocampo. Omar, tell me, one of proposal which your report of Billionaire Bonanza is, well, I can't wait until I see the film series on that. I think that will be more educational for this think tank than your report going. Discourage wealth hiding through passage of Corporate Transparency Act. What is that?
Yeah, so one thing that I think like the Panama Papers helped reveal is this idea that we have no idea how much wealth is being hid across in offshore accounts and in tax havens, and we definitely want to have some more transparency because because we're missing out on a ton of revenue that could be a tax can be levied on. And this is kind of goes along with what I was saying earlier about the wealth defense industry. So like there's the people who make that up are tax accountants, lawyers, and their whole thing is basically to hide the wealth of ultra high net worth individuals and families. So I think that if we were able to have some transparency and see how much wealth is being hidden away, and then we can properly tax it, they'll fill a lot of holes in our budget, and can help fund a lot of things.
Well, I thought these Panama Papers were all about the dictators in the third world who are hiding their money. So you're bringing it to right there in Chicago, in America. Who in America was hiding their wealth overseas?
I can't think of anyone like off the top of my head, but it wasn't third world dictators because I know that someone who got in a lot of trouble was Messi, the soccer player. He showed up on the Panama Papers, but in general, again, one thing that ultra high net worth individuals do, they always look for a way to dodge a tax system, and they look for ways to store their wealth and hide their wealth.
So what Corporate Transparency Act would do?
I think that would help. It would have to be an international thing, because we would have to collaborate with other governments, and
like the Russians and the Chinese.
Yeah, I mean, well, first we got to identify where the tax havens are. So like normally it's like Cayman Islands, Switzerland. The United States is actually a really big tax haven as well.
Really?
Yeah. So like one place in particular is Delaware.
Yeah, everybody is registered in Delaware.
Exactly. So then they can mask ownership, and people, you can never really know who's the owner. So like there'll be like a company, they'll buy something or they have an account, and you never know who the real owner is. So something like a transparency bill would definitely we would have to reveal, who the owner is, because we want to know, for example, who's buying X, Y, and Z. So therefore that can, be good for, cracking down on corruption too. But as far as like tax havens are concerned, like we would have to have like a lot of international cooperation. There's other people who've done great work on this. Gabriel Zuckman, he's a French economist. He's a professor here in the United States. I don't recall which institution. I want to say Princeton. He's done a lot of work about on hidden wealth, and we use a lot of his work to inform our ideas on transparency and making sure that people are paying their fair share of taxes.
So some of these major billionaires who have made $500 billion in last 3 months, are they implicated in hiding some of the wealth as well?
I'm not sure if they're implicated at the moment, for example.
Okay. So unless there's a Transparency Act, we will not know what they're doing there, right?
Yeah, and also like there some people accumulate this wealth, like for example, like let's take Eric Yuan, who's the CEO of Zoom. Like you can probably say he was well positioned because he had something that got their demand got increased for that service. So he was well positioned and he has seen a great increase in wealth. But then there's other people. Ernest Garcia, he's the CEO of Carvana. He's actually being sued by his shareholders right now because he played upon fears of the coronavirus pandemic to make the price of his stock go down. And then he basically purchased all those stocks when they plummeted. He just purchased all of them at like basement prices. So wow. Yeah, so he's being sued by his shareholders right now because they consider this almost like insider trading. So there are people who I would say were well positioned, and you can make the argument that they've earned it. They had a good business model. I would say that's the case with Zoom, but then you have other people who are exploiting it, and then having more concentration of wealth and market share through, I would say, unethical means, and that's one example.
One of the suggestions, Omar Ocampo, your organization has is a charity stimulus. I mean, now, we're a charitable organization, not for profit, and we have seen a huge drop in last 3-4 months. Our fundraisers got canceled, and people who are donating small parties, they don't have a whole lot of money. And we were not in servicing other human beings. We were just, more information and bridge building oriented. But so what was the thinking behind that charity stimulus which you are proposing?
Yeah, so I think so we've realized that in the past few years that there's been an increase in philanthropy, and that a lot of the charitable giving is like top heavy, meaning that the rich, the wealth, the billionaires are donating more than your average person is. So, and the thing is that the rich use this as a for the tax benefit. So they donate, let's say, $100 million. That money immediately goes to a donor advised fund. So if you put $100 million in that fund, they get an immediate tax write-off, and then the money that should be given to charity or to be used in a charitable way, and theoretically can sit there indefinitely because there's no requirement for disbursement. So that money may never reach its desired destination.
Wow. So this is one of those loopholes.
Exactly.
You can put it in that, okay, I'm going to give it to charity and don't give. And it's sitting there.
Exactly. And
instead of reaching.
Yeah.
So what are you recommending that they give out? Why you're saying only 10% give out? Why not more?
That's a good question. I mean, obviously, there's so right now we've estimated there's $120 billion sitting in donor advised funds with no requirement for disbursement. So we want at least 10% to be dispersed within the next couple of I think we said 3 years. But we can do if people are more ambitious, we can do 20%. Why not?
Probably they keep that money in endowment fund, and so it can keep raising money and give out only small percentage. So there is sort of a model in which they can sustain their charity. So this is a soft recommendation that at least give 10% of whatever you're taking and taking credit for.
Yeah.
So state tax, is the state tax different from the wealth tax?
Yes. So the wealth tax is basically everything, all the assets. So that's stocks, that's bonds, that's real estate, home ownership, retirement accounts.
Cash under the bed?
Excuse me?
Cash under the bed also?
Yeah, yeah. Cash that they're having behind the sofa. And the estate tax is more of wealth that becomes inherited. So, for example, let's say that my dad just wants to give me. Let's just pretend my dad's a billionaire and he gives me $100 billion, right? And the state tax would tax that $100 billion, but it's like a one-time tax. The wealth tax would be a yearly tax, and that would be based on the person's net worth or the amount of wealth that they have.
Well, Omar Ocampo, you have learned quite a bit in your working as a think tank and research and billionaires and millionaires and all that. But I'd like to switch a little bit. I mean, you have done your masters in Cairo.
Yes, sir.
Where there were millions of people demonstrating for democracy and rights and freedoms, and you were in the midst of it. Would you mind sharing some of your observations of that, what you saw there?
Yeah, so I arrived in Cairo in 2011. So it was in the midst of the Arab Spring, and it was a time where people were demanding democracy and dignity and bread, and having having their material existence secured. So at the time, I would say that when I was there, a lot of people were very hopeful. People were very optimistic. I was there for the first elections, the parliament elections, and people were excited, that they were able to, cast a vote, because they had, over 30 years of dictatorship under Hosni Mubarak, and then
who will always get elected by 95% of the votes.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Like he had those elections 10 years ago where he won 98%. Yeah. So it was very hopeful, but I think there was there was conflict around what they wanted the state to look like, because you had some people who were secular. There was people, Muslim Brotherhood. So there was a lot of clashes along what the state would look like. But unfortunately, there was a military. Well, I would argue that it was a coup where al-Sisi took over power. And as far as freedoms and liberties and democracy, all the gains that they made were rolled back.
So what role our government and our billionaires play in countries like Egypt?
Well, I would hope they play little to no role, because I feel like problems like for example, Egyptian problems should be solved by Egyptians. I think that the United States could provide diplomatic help. But the thing is that I don't think the U.S. foreign policy actually has the interests of the average Egyptian, I don't think they have their best interests in mind. The United States is, always looking for, to protect international markets. They want to make sure that Egypt stays an ally. That's why they give them, I think it's like over $1 billion a year on military assistance. And because if there was, I think if there was any real democracy, one of the things that I think the Egyptian people would do is they would probably reconsider the peace deal with Israel. So yeah, but for me, U.S. foreign policy is to make sure that the integrity of the peace deal remains.
So did U.S. condemned, supported the democracy movement? There were some charges that this Arab Spring is nothing but an American conspiracy or something like that. You were on these streets. What were people feeling about it?
No, so at least in Egypt, there was, it didn't start in January 25th. There was a trajectory, of a lot of civil disobedience in Egypt, and basically, to gain some more rights, some more freedoms, and have less repression. And I also think Egypt was inspired by Tunisia. So the revolution that happened over there. So I think it was, it was a completely organic movement from the bottom up rising. I think that Europe was trying to suppress that, and so was the U.S. The U.S. was not throwing 100% support behind the Egyptian protesters, but they did so once it was too late. Once they saw that the military was not going to stand unconditionally behind Mubarak, they were like, yeah, we'll support the Egyptian people. But I think they also took advantage of Gaddafi once Libya started having an uprising. Like Gaddafi was like a historical enemy, so they were saying that we can dispose of Gaddafi and then pretend that we're on the side of democracy in general. So I think they were trying to fill some type of credibility gap that the West was suffering, because the West was on the side of dictators at first. I remember Sarkozy was offering Ben Ali to send French security forces to suppress the protesters in Tunis.
Well, normally people consider Arab Spring to be a failure. What do you think?
Well, I say revolutions are always a process. So I also don't think it's linear. I definitely think that there has been a setback. I wouldn't say, I'm not comfortable with saying failure, because I don't think that this process has ended. But at the moment, it's not looking positive.
And in the case of Tunisia, actually, I would say that it succeeded. There have been democratic elections, and people, all the energy who came out of that revolution continued to create the debate and the discussion and the change of government, don't you think?
No, I agree. So like the silver lining has always been Tunisia. But unfortunately, in Egypt, there's a setback. Libya is looking really bad. And that's, to me, that's a disaster. And all the Gulf countries that, they were able to, buy stability. So at the moment, and then Syria is really bad. So at the moment, I would say that the Arab Springs has been put on pause. But I would say that, these are long-term, like these are things that happen, long-term. But yeah, at the moment, it's hasn't reached its goals.
So desire for freedom and liberty and democracy cannot be stopped. People want to live their lives the way they choose. So I like what you say, that the process has not stopped. People's feeling and what they desire. And in the case of Tunisia, definitely things improved. Support for democracy from the Western countries was essentially exposed when they jump on Sisi's support. They
Exactly.
supported Mubarak until the end. And then as soon as the similar guy comes up, they say, oh, yes, very. I remember on being an NPR and somebody before me was being interviewed, and he was saying, well, the situation in Egypt is so complex, and there are people who have different opinion, and this elected person got only 53 or 54% of the vote. I said, my God, when we don't want to support something, we say it's very complex.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the same vote Obama got.
exactly.
And that is not complex, but Egyptian situation, democratically elected party, just because we don't like them, it's very complex. We need to really be very careful about thinking. Well, Umar, thank you so much. You have been very helpful.
No, thank you, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to express to share what the results of my research and some of my personal thoughts. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Omar Ocampo is a researcher at the Program of Inequality and the Common Good, and co-author of the report, which is nothing but Billionaire's Bonanza. And stay tuned for the serial on that. Thank you so much. You're watching Muslim Network TV. This is Imam Malik Mujahid. And we are always there on Galaxy 19 satellite 24/7, Amazon Fire TV, Roku, as well as muslimnetwork.tv. Pretty soon on Apple TV as well. Thank you. Peace. Salam.